Hi, everyone. I am Allie, and I work with A2 to B1 English learners who understand the language well, but hesitate when it's time to speak. So, if that sounds familiar, or maybe this is your child, this video is for you. So, today we're going to talk about something that I see all of the time with my students. So, some of my strongest English students can read novels confidently, and they have a pretty strong understanding. So when it comes time to explain their opinion out loud, they might freeze. Maybe they hesitate. And it's not because they don't know the answer, but because they're afraid of getting it wrong or afraid of saying it incorrectly. So again, many students they understand more than they can produce, and sometimes they freeze. Have you guys ever seen this with your child or maybe with yourself? So many of my students can read confidently, they follow along in the lessons well, they perform well on comprehension tasks. But when it comes time to start speaking, they hesitate, right? So they give short answers, maybe a one word answer, good, bad, right? They avoid elaborating, giving detail, using an expression or a description. So parents often ask me, Allie, why? So, a really important idea today is understanding English and expressing English are two very different skills. So, reading allows time and is more of a receptive skill, we call it. So, this means you can understand it and you understand at a much higher level, whereas speaking requires real time thinking and organizing. So, this is a production skill, so a completely separate skill. And this means that they have to use the language themselves to express something, right? So, these are very different skills. And one reason that this is, a problem is schools often train for correctness. You're aiming for 100% or you want the best score in your class or for you, right? So students learn to choose the right answer, right? But they're not always, when you're speaking, it requires generating an answer, right? Not selecting one from a multiple choice question. So, oftentimes in schools or maybe some traditional language schools, students are rewarded for the right answer and not for thinking out loud or for actually learning. All right. And secondly, perfectionism blocks risk. So many of my high achievers are perfectionists and they would rather stay silent than say something imperfectly. So that fear blocks growth. Um, and the third reason is the lack of verbal structure. So oftentimes, students aren't taught how to form a sentence correctly, right? They know the vocabulary, but they don't know how to organize that thought. So this is a problem, right? So they need to be taught structure. And some things that actually help. So a lot of parents are like, what do I do? What actually helps my child? So, strategy number one. So, using simple speaking frameworks. I often call these sentence starters. So, oftentimes I start my classes with sentence starters. So, we have questions. Would you rather, for example, would you rather go to the beach or go to the mountains? And my students see the structure, the pictures, and then they also see the sentence structure. I would rather go to blank, the beach or the mountains, because, and then they give me that reason. So it's great for my students to see that structure because it decreases anxiety and helps them create those long sentences that have a reason. So, some other simple speaking frameworks or sentence starters are I think because, one reason is, or for example. Another strategy is to normalize think time. So, after I ask a question, I like to give at least 5 seconds for my students to think and formulate their answer. So remember, if you are practicing with your child, please go ahead, ask your question, and then take a second and think. Those 5 seconds, it'll help your student produce, and it'll help them not feel so anxious about not having the answer right away, right? And strategy number 3. So, most importantly, in my teaching practice, I love when my students are making mistakes. This shows me that they are taking risks with the language and that they are growing. So, I remember specific instances when I was learning Spanish where I will never make that mistake again because I was like, oh, that's not right. Or maybe I was corrected or something. So this is a really great way to learn, is that you're always growing. So mistakes mean growth, and it means your brain is stretching, right? And remember, going back to our receptive skills, which we referenced earlier in the video, your student definitely understands much more than they can produce. So they simply need to practice turning understanding into expression. And this is a skill that can be trained. All right. And remember, friends, so they know much more than they can say. And with the right structure and encouragement, that gap can close. So if this sounds like your child, I'd love to hear which part of speaking feels the hardest for them. Is it organizing ideas, fear of making mistakes, or is it something else? So go ahead, type that below in the comments, and I would love to hear what your child is struggling with. And if you're guiding an A2 or B1 learner at home, go ahead and subscribe. So my channel is designed to help English learners grow into confident, real-world communicators. So again, remember, I would love to hear what your child is struggling with, and I would love to help your child. So if there's any advice I can give you, I'd love to. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time.